Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Sideline. My name is Rishi Oza,
My name's Asher Hire.
and we got a great episode for you guys. First off,
They're in
we
the
fixed
final.
audio,
Okay,
finally.
yeah, we fixed audio.
Took forever. Thanks, Zoom, for one, limiting our time and also screwing up the audio. Um, but we also got a good episode because we are going to talk about a very interesting first three games of the NBA Finals so far. Denver took a 2-1 lead last night off of one of the best duo performances in NBA history behind the first two 30-point triple doubles in the NBA Finals, or first 30-point triple double in the same game by any players ever, not just in playoffs or finals, but in regular season as well, from Jokic and Murray. Um, First ever 30-20-10 game from Jokic in the finals game by any player. Just a very, very good game from the Nuggets overall after a very disappointing game two loss on Sunday night. What were your initial thoughts from the first three games as a whole, but then also specifically after what we saw last night?
As a whole, to be honest, they're not playing well. I don't think. Like when you look at, especially game two, obviously they didn't play well. Game one, they really didn't play that well. Um, Game three, obviously you have that amazing duo performance. I mean, the best game by a duo of all time when you consider the circumstances. Um, And if the Nuggets end up winning this championship, I mean, this duo is going to go down in history because, you can go down every champion ever that has ever won and probably name like the best duo on that team. And this Jokic and Murray duo is just considering what they did last night, and we'll see with how this series progresses. But man, they are up there with some of the best duos of all time. Just the way that they complement each other so well, it's amazing. And really, like, going to game three, um, like it's crazy that you expect this out of Jokic, a 30-20-10 game. So like, that's the Nuggets team. That's like the core of their team. And then you need the other guys to step up. And Jamal did that after having a pretty rough game two and then kind of blaming himself for the loss for a little bit for the in the press conference. He came out and was just a dog. Like he hit some huge shots. The Nuggets only made five threes, but Murray hit that 1-3 over Adebayo on the left wing that was huge. Like it seemed like all the threes that the Nuggets made and Jamal made all came at huge times.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, you get that triple double out of Murray, and then obviously this is the even if you have these two guys going crazy, it is still the Christian Brown
Oh yeah.
game, I guess. We're gonna remember it more of like, okay, those two guys both got triple doubles in the finals game, but Christian Brown, Nuggets won by 15. He scored 15. Um, he was exceptional.
Yeah. I mean, we have been praising Christian Brown the whole season, really. We have been confused when he hasn't played. We've been very pleased when he has played. Really, since Summer League, we've been seeing this sort of version of him. I feel like in the first time we saw him in Summer League, he was trying to do so much offensively, and it just wasn't working. But then once preseason came around, once the regular season came around, he toned it down. He bought into the role, and this is what he's been the entire season. And I mean, the dunk that he had off the steal. That was so cool. I mean, he's been really good through the first three games defensively anyway. Um, but I mean, after the game that he had in game two, which he had a really solid game, for him to come out and have an even better one on the road, when the team is very aware of him, is huge. And I also agree with you. I don't think that the team played well through the first two games. I thought this last game was one of the more complete games that they've had, not just in the series, but in the playoffs as a whole, because defensively they were incredible. But
Yeah.
um, the first two games, they were very clearly so rusty. And like they kept saying, like, oh no, we'll be fine. Like, we're ready. We've been staying active. Like, we're not just like sitting around doing nothing over their 9-10 day break, but they still were definitely rusty and the intensity was not there at all. But you could tell the intensity, the communication, the energy, everything was up. in Game Three, in the biggest game of in Nuggets franchise history. They definitely responded. So
Yeah, I
I was
think like
very pleased with how they saw.
I think they're more mentally rusty than they are physically rusty because so many of those threes that the Heat got in game two were just because of the Nuggets messing up on defense. Like they made 17 threes in game two, and I believe like nine of them were because of miscommunications on defense. Someone got wide open. And they cleaned that up. I think it happened one or two times in game three, but definitely not on the level that it happened in game two.
Yeah,
So that was obviously huge to clean that up because that's the reason the Heat won game two because how ridiculous they shot from three, but the Nuggets were allowing those open looks. So um, I was gonna say one more thing I'm forgetting, but I mean just Porter. I mean we can talk about Porter. Game one, I thought Porter played really well. Even though he shot 2 for 11 from three, and he's now 3 for 19, I think, from three in the series, something like that. Um, but his defense in game one was spectacular. But he is back in the doghouse. He's been there before, especially with Malone in the regular season. We know how he treats his young players, but
yeah,
21 minutes this game. I think only like 23 or 24 in game two. But that's the luxury of having such an impactful rookie like Christian Brown is that when one of your starters is struggling, and Bruce Brown too, when one of your starters is struggling, whether that's Porter or KCP or Gordon, they can be brought out and the two Browns will give you energy. So, that's coming from them game by game, and they'll provide some solid defense. So really, it's a luxury to have. You look at the 21 minutes for Porter, and it's like, oh, he's terrible, which I mean he kind of was, but like it speaks to how good some of the pieces on the bench are that you're willing to take out your starter for half the game.
yeah. And I like this last game three was definitely not his best. He really struggled to get his shot going. I thought he had good looks. He didn't force anything. Like most of his shots were open. They just weren't falling. He's just in a slump. It happens to everybody. KCP was in a huge slump for like most of the last month of the season, and it just took one game. Is that game against Utah? He broke out of it, and he's been great in the postseason. Unfortunately, having a tough stretch in the playoffs as well for him. But I thought MPJ first half was awful. He had a couple of the breakdowns that you talked about, leading to some open threes. He wasn't active defensively. He wasn't active on the boards. But in the second half, he only had one stint. To start the second half, 6 7 minutes. He was great. I thought he was phenomenal. I think he only had one or two shots. He missed all of them, but they were good shots. He got offensive rebounds. He forced up jump balls. He was good defensively. He got switched out. You could tell that like his energy was different defensively. He was getting way lower in his stance. He was fighting through screens a lot better. He was chasing off ball a lot better. Um, so like I think overall, obviously this hasn't been the series we wanted to see from him, but there have been so many different spurts where you're looking at it, it's like, okay, you can live with that. With how Jokic is playing, with how Murray is playing, you can live with MPJ not hitting every single shot if he's this active on the glass, if he's this active defensively. Because he had a couple of plays. There was this one offensive rebound that he had in the third quarter. I think KCP or somebody missed like a wide open three. He came out of nowhere and got it on the strong side, coming from the weak side. Um, and that was like a huge possession. It ended in points. And so
Yeah.
I think like his energy's there and he's getting the shots he wants. He just has to knock them down. And he's one of the best shooters in the world. He's the best shooter on the team. Like eventually they're gonna go down because like it's pretty clear that Miami's game planning against giving him open looks and making him work for them. Same with KCP. Like against LA, almost every single three that those guys took were like wide open in rhythm in the flow of the offense. Like these guys they're not rotating off of KCP or Porter. They're forcing them to shoot off the move in transition, taking a lot tougher shots rather than stand still, catch and shoot half court looks. Um,
Yeah, because I think
so he'll have
that's
to adjust.
probably a big point of emphasis because going into this series, the obvious kind of like matchup you're looking for was Porter against this tiny Heat team that you can just shoot right over them. But um, obviously it's not that simple. And anytime a player contests, it's much harder. So like the Heat have definitely been zoning in on exactly that because they know the weakness of their roster. And so, they know how to game plan for that, and are specifically game planning for that. The one thing I was going to say going back was I think like for game two, also with all those miscommunications, um, obviously maybe it was some of the coaching with Spoelstra because Porter came out and said that um, anytime the Nuggets were calling switch or were calling to stay with their man,
Yeah, yeah,
if they would call switch, the Heat would just slip the screen, not even set a screen, and then just run away from the action, and then the two defenders would get confused. And then obviously if they called just to stay with your own man, like then it'd be different. But the Heat knew what was coming, so for the Nuggets to fix that on the road where communication is always much harder, I think is impressive and you know great showing by Malone and Adelman and the staff, Saunders. So um, great job there. Christian Brown, the dunk was awesome, but I think the one play that I loved the most out of Christian Brown, which might be my favorite Christian Brown play this entire season, was him getting the ball, I think, on the right wing and just attacking Jimmy Butler, putting his shoulder into him, knocks Jimmy back, and then floats it up and in. Like the confidence was through the roof for Christian
yeah,
last night, and for him to take on Jimmy Butler, who's one of the strongest players in the league, and knock him back and shoot right over him after locking him up on the defensive end a few possessions. Like that was amazing. He had that one possession where he locked up Butler, got the rebound. That was awesome. Great defensive stop. And then another one where Butler was trying to bully his way down, couldn't find a shot. Butler had a pass to Adebayo. I think he missed. Um, so yeah, I mean, Brown he was only a +2 in the like plus minus, but man, he flipped that game, especially in the third quarter.
yeah. Third quarter, he had a stretch. He got like one layup to put Denver up like 11 or six, like 8 or 11, like somewhere in that range. Then he had another layup off a cut from Jokic, and he had the dunk, and then he had an and one, then he had the float. Like he had so many plays in a row that just sucked the entire energy out of the building because I'm like when people say, "Oh, the key to guard Jokic is to make him a scorer," it's not just that; it's to force other people to make plays. Like it's when you do double, make sure it's not open shots. It's make sure they can go off the dribble. And if you're gonna guard Jokic one on one, don't help and give open looks. But what Christian Brown was doing so well, and especially against the zone, was cutting and getting into the rim to get open looks outside of jumpers. And I thought that was huge. Like he was, I thought he was the best, third best player on the court, not just
Yeah.
even for Denver. I thought he was the third best player on the court. And part of that was his ability to break the zone, and Denver really figured it out, um, which is why I'm very interested to see what Miami does because they didn't run a lot of zone in the second half because Denver obliterated the zone in this game because they switched how they ran it. So instead of uh, normally Jokic, normally in the zone in general, what you want to do is you want to get the ball to the middle of the floor. Obviously, Miami knows that. Obviously, Denver knows that. So Jokic would be on a smaller guy, but they would wall him up and they'd shade everybody on him. Whichever corner was empty for Denver against the zone, Miami would bring their man up and they would just overload one side of the floor and they'd make the rotations and they're switching up top great. It's what makes Miami really hard to defend because they're so smart with their rotations, they're smart with their switching, they communicate very well. But what Denver did is instead of starting their zone in the middle of the floor, they started it on the post and they would get Jokic on the post in that empty corner where they couldn't rotate fast enough onto him, and everyone didn't have eyes on the ball. And they scored so many times off of that, and they scored a couple of times on cuts by Brown. And it was that was a genius adjustment by Denver and by Malone, and that's not something that a lot of fans are going to notice um, because people don't notice the good things that coaches do in terms of adjustments. But I thought that was huge against the zone, and Brown was a huge part of it because he was cutting to the rim and he was breaking down the zone with his dribbles, which is something that
Yeah.
like I didn't expect to happen. Like I didn't expect Christian Brown off the dribble to be the reason why the zone was was going to get broken. I'm sure Miami didn't expect that either, but that was one of the bigger things that I noticed.
Yeah, he had one play where it seemed like he isolated at the top of the key. He isolated, drove down, and handed it off to Jokic, who made a little like 5 foot jump shot. Um, and then he also had that one huge cut where Murray was getting double teamed up at the top, and he cuts from the corner to, like along the baseline, and Murray finds him, and he gets the and one finishing over Lowry. That felt like the dagger in the game almost. I thought so. Uh, yeah, I mean, phenomenal job and much needed after the team shoots 5 for 18 from three. I mean, you say 5 for 18 from three in game 3. I don't think the Nuggets like would win if you just told me that's what they would shoot. Um, Heat were 11 for 35, so 2 wins away, man. They're close. It feels like they're definitely the better team. Um,
Yeah,
and that game
yeah,
two was just a little like mental lapse. They might have also thought that like going into the Sun series that this is the best team that they face, that KD and Booker, and then going into LA series, it's like, oh, this is another one of the best teams that they face because it's LA and it's LeBron and it's AD. And then you take game 1 in pretty easy and convincing fashion against the 8 seed Miami Heat, who obviously are not as nowhere near as talented as you are. And so to win game 1 easily, maybe they took their foot off the gas pedal. It's hard to say that because they've been so focused the entire year.
yeah,
Um, but clearly they weren't focused in that game because of all the defensive miscues. Um, so yeah, I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
I like I. A lot of people like didn't realize Denver going into game 2, they'd won 7 straight playoff games. Like that is hard to do. That's almost 2 straight sweeps. Like that is hard to do. So I honestly just think that they were just feeling overconfident in themselves. Like they had just, they, like you said, relatively easy. They took their foot off the gas in the fourth quarter of game 1, but a relatively easy win. Then you're coming off of a sweep. You're coming off of 2 blowout wins against Phoenix in the last 2 games of that series. So they're probably just thinking, dude, we can just cruise through this if we want to. But obviously, Miami's not thinking that. Miami thinks that they can win the series as they should. Um, so they come out with a ton more energy. Denver isn't able to make it up mid game. Uh, so I think they just got overconfident and they just started to go into cruise control a little bit and just underestimated Miami. But I think in this game, they really showed it. And it was said on First Take. Jay Williams said it, and Gabe Vincent also said it. He said a quote. He was like, "Our margin of error is way smaller than theirs. Like we have to be so much crisper on everything,"
yeah,
which is very good self awareness by Miami. They know they're not as talented. They know that they have to be perfect. Um, Denver does not have to be perfect. They just have to be. They just have to match the effort level that Miami has, and their talent level is gonna beat it. And Jay Williams said it on First Take too. He was like Miami doesn't have the talent level. If Denver's able to match the effort and the intensity and the desperation, they're gonna win every single time because they're too talented. They're too big. And I think that's exactly what we saw in game 3. Denver, I don't think Denver played like a phenomenal game, but they played good. Like they played good. They made the shot. They made shots in the paint. They used their strengths and they played with effort. They played with the same effort that Miami had,
yeah,
and their talent took over with Jokic, with Murray, and with just their bench outperforming Miami's bench.
yeah. And
And
that's what you
that's
need.
all it's gonna take.
That's what you need against Miami because you have to accept that they're gonna slow the game down. Like the Nuggets only scored 104 points in the first game, but I think their offensive rating was like 119 or close to it. So
It was
like
good. Yeah,
their offensive rating has been good. So the Heat are just completely banking on, first of all, scoring every possession pretty much, as they showed in game 2. Um, and limiting the number of opportunities the Nuggets get. So that's their whole game plan, pretty much. And if that happens, you're gonna get what happens in game 2. But that is such a small as you said, margin of error for the Heat because if their offense is just goes cold one quarter, pretty much over. Like I know the Heat, I think are they were 12-0 or something going into uh this fourth quarters. They were like 12-0 in fourth quarters in the playoffs. And they finally just lost one in game 3 by 1 point against the Nuggets, but so that's when they turn it on. And that's what happened in game 2 obviously with Duncan. So I mean the Heat need like near perfection to win a game and obviously they were absolutely perfect in game 2. Um, and the Nuggets haven't been perfect in any of these 3 games. And they're up 2-1. So, I think Denver finally like realizes, okay, that was honestly losing game 2 maybe was I don't want to say it's good because it's only a 7-game series. But it's not like a whole season. It's not like a moral loss or whatever, but um
It was a wake
it
up
woke
call.
them up
Like that.
though.
That
It woke them up.
yeah, there was a wake up call, and like I saw I don't remember what the stat was exactly, but Miami in game 2 had they had I think they only had 11 shots at the rim, which is an incredibly low number for a team over 4 quarters. So essentially, they just made every single jump shot that they took, and that's why they won. And that's what it's going to take. They're going to need insane shooting uh, from their role players, which is exactly what they got. And I think that, like you said, they're not as talented. I think Denver realizes now, like, listen, we just have to play with intensity and effort, and we're going to be able to win this series. I think our predictions of Nuggets in 5, 6 at the most, I think that's still very much on. Um, I think if Denver wins tomorrow night, I think they're gonna be able to sense it enough at home to be able to win. Um, but if they lose in a way that was similar to Game 2, I think this series could get ugly in a way that Denver is not going to want. Because if they have multiple games where effort and communication are the issues this late in the season, that's a problem. And if Miami's going to be able to adjust that much against them, like that's an issue. Um, because I don't know. This is kind of similar to the Lakers. The Lakers showed their hand with their adjustments early in the first couple of games, and Denver was able to adjust against that very very easily, and they didn't really need to struggle in the fourth quarters of those series or of those games. I think Miami's in a similar position. Their adjustment is zone, and their adjustment is like playing the zone against Jokic and taking away the 2-man game of Jokic and Murray. But I think Denver figured it out in terms of how to stop it. You play from the post, you drive, and you get into the lane with your role players and find stuff in the paint that way instead of relying on the 3-point shot, which hasn't been falling for Denver. I don't know what Miami can do to counter that. The only thing is completely if you're gonna play zone, shade it against Jokic and Murray completely and force somebody else to make a play off the dribble. Like as well as Christian Brown played off the dribble in game 3, he's like you're not going to expect him to do that every single game. You're going to bet on like if you're Miami, you'll say, okay, if Christian Brown beats us, we'll live with that. But we're not going to let Jokic and Murray beat us like they did in game 3. You're going to force Michael Porter Jr. to score off the dribble and make him make jump shots because he hasn't been doing that. You're going to force Aaron Gordon to do stuff off the dribble, force Bruce Brown to do stuff off the dribble. Um, that's the only adjustment I can think that Miami can make is just completely sell out to avoid the 2-man game and completely sell out to avoid Jokic and Murray doing anything, which is a damn near impossible task. Like
Yeah.
people haven't no team has been able to do it throughout the entire season, regular season included, and even going back further than that, like over the past 5 years that these guys have been playing at a high level. I don't know how. I don't know what they're going to be able to do.
No, I don't either. And I think Murray like is honestly playing one like his best ball maybe of his career when you look at the assists wise. Like I don't think he's ever had a stretch where he's had 3 games in a row with 10 assists. Um and that just adds a whole like different element because it's not just Murray, stop the pull up game with Murray and then try to limit Jokic's passing, but now Murray is a phenomenal passer. He's always been a great passer to Jokic in that pick and roll, but um, what he's been doing in this series specifically, like playmaking wise, has been phenomenal. He only had one turnover in game two to 10 assists. And he had seven turnovers in game three, but still 10 assists. Um, I mean, that just adds a whole nother element to their two man game. And yeah, it's impossible to stop. And that's what we thought coming into this series. I think is just the Nuggets are just so good, and I think we realized that game. Uh, really, I realized that. I guess I mean, we were saying before the Sun series, like I think the Nuggets are just like a really good team, but when they were really, really good, obviously it was when they beat the Suns in game six. That's like, damn, like that's a really good team. And then obviously they end up sweeping the Lakers. Um, but and then coming into this series, I was like, I don't know how the Heat, because I wanted to go Nuggets in four. Because I was like, I don't know how the Heat legitimately like win a game, like out execute the. I'm not gonna say out execute, but really just because I think they did out execute the Nuggets in game two, but um, I don't know, just outplay the Nuggets. Like I did not really see that happening. Outplay them to where like I'm trying to say like outplay them in like a legitimate way to where like
Like
both
take them
teams
out of
shoot
their
like
like take them out of their
30%.
game.
Kind of, but like not like a statistical anomaly game, which is what the Heat had in game two, where they shot 50% from three. And that's the only reason they won game two. Um, so like if both teams are shooting like 30% from three, there's just no way the Heat can beat the Nuggets. And so that's just kind of like looking at the heart of the game and not the margins and the random stuff that can just be flip flopped each game. I didn't think the Heat were going to beat the Nuggets if they both executed to their best of their levels. Um, like Denver's floor is higher and their ceiling is higher. And so the Heat do have to be perfect, and you have to catch the Nuggets on an off game to win. So I was trying to go with Nuggets in four, but obviously you will. We were kind of expecting one of these games in this series to be like game two. Um,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, it happened early. Rather than like the Nuggets being up 2-0 and then the Heat come back and they make all their threes, but at 1-1, it's like, damn, like this is a real series.
Yeah.
Um,
It gives Denver pressure, which I
yeah,
think they haven't really faced since game 5 against Phoenix. Like they haven't really had like pressure on them because they've been up in every series 2-0 up until that point. Only time a series was tied was 2-2 against Phoenix, and that was because Devin Booker shot 90% through
yeah,
two games and
exactly.
scored 80 points. Like
The
that's what it
statistical
takes to beat
anomaly.
it takes exactly it takes statistical anomalies to beat this Nuggets team. Um I don't know how many more statistical anomaly games that Miami has in them. Like I think that they have another game where they're gonna be able to make like a ton of threes on a good percentage. But Denver's now ready for that. They know, like, listen, like if we play with the intensity and they make their threes, that's fine because we know that we can still have a close game like that. Because they didn't play good down the stretch, they didn't play good against the zone. They really didn't play good at all throughout that game outside of that huge run in the second quarter. Like the rest of the game, they were pretty bad. Um, so when I look at that, I'm just like, if Denver just plays with that intensity for like 80% of the game, they're gonna win because they're just gonna completely outplay them. Um, so I think going into Game 4, I think Denver's biggest priority should be getting Michael Porter Jr. going in some way, whether it's at the rim or getting his jumper going, getting him shooting the ball with the same confidence that he was shooting in Game 1 and in the Lakers series, and just getting him engaged on the offensive end that way. I think that should be their main goal because you can win games with obviously just Jokic and Murray doing their thing. But if Michael Porter Jr. plays well, you do not beat Denver. You do not beat Denver if he has a good game. I don't know what the record is, but when MPJ scores 20 or more, Denver has like a ridiculous winning percentage. So if you get him 20 points, that's wraps because you already know what you're going to get from Jokic and Murray at that point.
Right,
So you
right.
get like 80-ish points from three guys, yeah, that's it. Like you can't beat
Yeah,
that team.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I'm excited to see how they come out. I'm more excited to see what Miami does because Spoelstra is a genius. Like he is a genius, and what makes him so good with this Miami team is that he's just as insane as the rest of the people are about like winning, and his mentality is the exact same. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they make adjustments um,
yeah.
against the Jokic Murray combo.
No, I'm too. We'll see. Like, I mean, I don't. I mean, this game it was mainly involving their two best defenders, Butler and Bam, and Jokic and Murray.
Yeah,
Obviously, had that insane game. So, like, yeah, I don't know what they're supposed to do because I mean, just like roster wise, there's just nothing else to do. Like, they've inserted all their guys. They did that. Well, I guess not really in game one. They didn't, but game two, obviously, they started with Love, and that was kind of their one like rotation adjustment. Obviously, like you still have the hero thing, which I think would only happen if the Heat go down 3-1. If they lose tomorrow, um, then maybe you could see Hero coming in game five just to try to like, you're down 3-1 anyways. There's nothing to lose.
yeah,
Um, so try to put him in as a spark plug, but I don't even know if that happens because it just seems like he's not going to play. Like what he said after game one or something. I don't know, but he was like, I don't want to disrupt the rhythm of the team, stuff like that. And Spolstra just keeps like pushing it off to the side. It hasn't been a definitive like, yes, he's going to come back.
yeah.
So it's starting to feel more and more like he's not going to play. He's not going to play in game four. I don't think. I mean, there hasn't been any talk or any
They
rumors
said
of
today that like he wasn't cleared yet. If he's not cleared the
yeah,
day before, he's not gonna get cleared in 24 hours. Like
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
I agree. I even and I think even if Hero comes back, he hasn't played in like 2 months. Like he's gonna be a big
right.
defensive liability on the court. Like you can't go zone with him to protect him like they do when Duncan Robinson's in the game. Because Duncan Robinson has been playing for 2 months. He's been, he has the chemistry with everybody on the defensive end. They know when to switch. He's in a rhythm on that end. Tyler Hero's not in a rhythm on that end, and he's gonna get attacked relentlessly. Whether he's coming off the bench, he's gonna get attacked by Murray and Bruce Brown, or if he's in the starters, he's gonna get put in an action with whoever is the guy because Denver can run a two-man action with anybody on the court with Jokic. So
Yeah,
I
and
don't know how much
and
he's gonna help. If he's not even gonna be 100% whenever he plays, and every single video I've seen of him playing, like he's not shooting jumpers like fully jumping like at 100% speed. He's like really lobbing jumpers up there. Like he's not flicking his wrist. I mean, he's
right.
surgically repaired the hand. Like he's not going to be able to do everything immediately. So I
And
don't know what he's going to be able to bring aside from just a spark plug.
Duncan honestly might be harder to guard for the Nuggets than Hero is. Like off the ball stuff. I
Yeah,
mean, if you like compare it with Curry and Kyrie or something, like I would think that guarding Curry off the ball is harder than guarding Kyrie on ball. Just with how much you got to fight through the screens, and if you're guarding somebody on ball, you know that you have four help guys, but with Duncan flying around the screens, plus he's big, so he can get his shot off, like he can just rise up over you. Um, I think might even be harder to guard than for KCP, for example. I think KCP guarding Hero on ball is a much better matchup than KCP having to follow Duncan Robinson flying around everywhere. Um, and so yeah, there's that. We got 5 minutes left until this Zoom closes. I don't know, like why did they ever add this? This is so weird.
such a
Um,
dumb
like we wouldn't
decision.
have been able to like do classes and stuff.
It's
um,
true.
so yeah,
That's
but
true.
we got 5 minutes left. Chris Paul has been released. I think like is it official? I don't even know
Not
like the whole.
technically. They have until June
Lore.
28th to do something. But
Okay,
based on what everyone's saying, he's either going to get released and re-signed or he's going to get traded somewhere. But I don't think he's going to get traded. Like I when the news was announced that he got released, I was like, they couldn't find a single trade partner for him.
yeah,
But now I'm looking at it, it's like all the contenders, they're not going to shell out assets for a guy who has never been able to stay healthy for a deep run, and who's also 38 years old and is also making 40 million a year. Like that's just a dumb trade to make. Even though I think he is still a good player,
Yeah.
depending on if he's able to change his role.
I mean, he would be like the dream backup point guard
Yeah,
for any contending team, especially the Nuggets when Bruce Brown, their backup point guard, is not going to be on the team next year. And you don't want Reggie Jackson out there. So like the Nuggets don't really have, and you don't
Clint
really want. I
Gillespie.
was gonna say, you don't really want a guy coming off a broken leg, who needs to spend
Hasn't
some
played a
time in the
single
G
minute.
League. Yeah, exactly. Um, so I mean, the Nuggets have I guess, a roster problem to solve in the offseason. I'm just trying to hammer down that backup point guard spot, and if Chris Paul is willing to take like $4-5 million. Um,
Is he willing to take the mid-level exception and also
like the
be a backup
lowest
point
of the
guard?
low because we have like nothing. Um,
Yeah.
but hey,
There's
I
also
mean,
there's also going to be the hard cap. I don't even know if Denver's going to get a full mid-level. I don't know the
no,
rules of the new
exactly. I know. So
CBA.
you got to sign him to like the vet minimum.
Yeah.
But if he
We'll
wants
see
to
how
ring,
committed he is to ring chasing.
exactly. Yeah, he could be like our version of like, oh my God, like David West to signing with the Warriors. That was so weird. And like LaMarcus Aldridge with the Nets.
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll see. It's gonna be interesting off season. There's so much parity around the league. There's gonna be so many guys who are gonna switch, especially because of the new CBA rules. Guys aren't gonna be able to keep their players. Like Denver's not gonna keep Bruce Brown. Wherever he goes is gonna be huge. Um, they're not gonna be able to keep a lot of their players. You're gonna see a lot more young guys get opportunities with contending teams. So you'll see the player development a lot more. Uh, so yeah, it'll be interesting. The Chris Paul situation's definitely something to keep an eye on.
yeah. Um,
For
but yeah,
overall the
it's
team.
an interesting new era. Like this CBA is really, I mean, monumental. Like, and you have to appreciate the team right now because each year the team is going to have pretty significant like roster turnover. Every team is. Um,
Yeah,
with the new CBA, it feels like I don't know. I mean, football definitely has some decent roster turnover. Baseball, it seems like anytime an MLB player is a free agent, they sign with a different team. They never re-sign.
yeah.
So like it kind of feels like that. Um, where like one baseball team could win 100 games one year and then just end up winning like 70 the next year. Um, so yeah,
Like the
huge,
Rangers
huge
this year.
CBA coming up. What?
Like the Rangers this year.
Yeah, or the Orioles. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just out of nowhere, just because of a couple free agents.
Yeah.
All right, we got less than a
Um,
minute left.
I know we're gonna get cut
I
off
don't got
at
anything
any point.
else.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
Okay, we will end it there. We will see what happens tomorrow night, game 5 or game 4. Um, see if Denver takes 3-1 or if we're going back to Denver tied 2-2. Gonna be it for us. Thanks all for watching. Peace.
Peace.